Fear. It's the silent architect of our limitations, the invisible hand that pulls us back from our dreams, and the voice that whispers, "You can't," when your soul yearns to soar. If you felt trapped in patterns of anxiety, doubt, and hesitation, know that you're not alone. And more importantly, know that there is a path to freedom. Today, we'll explore the profound wisdom on dissolving fear from its very roots, drawing inspiration from timeless teachers like Thomas Troward and Ralph Waldo Emerson to uncover the spiritual mechanics of courage. This isn't just about managing fear, it's about transforming it into a foundation for authentic power and peace. Subscribe now and join me on this journey to reclaim your fearless soul. A Fearless Soul, your guide to dissolving fear and cultivating courage. Preface. Welcome, dear seeker, to this sacred space of healing and transformation. In opening these pages, you have already demonstrated the most essential quality needed for growth: courage. The courage to look within, to acknowledge what troubles you, and to seek a different way of being. Fear is perhaps humanity's most primal companion. It has walked alongside us from our earliest beginnings, sometimes protecting us, but often limiting the magnificent expression of who we truly are. I want you to know, with absolute certainty, that the fears gripping your heart today, whether they manifest as anxiety about the future, insecurity about your worth, or hesitation to pursue your deepest calling, are not permanent structures of your being. They are temporary visitors, energetic patterns that can be dissolved and transformed through conscious awareness and spiritual understanding. This book is not about denying fear or forcing yourself to be brave through sheer willpower. Such approaches often drive our fears deeper underground, where they continue their work unseen. Instead, we will embark on a gentle journey of illumination, understanding the true nature of fear from both metaphysical and practical perspectives. We will explore how fear operates in your energetic field, how it shapes your reality through vibrational influence, and most importantly, how you can systematically release its hold through presence, wisdom, and spiritual alignment. The path we'll walk together honors both ancient wisdom and modern understanding. Drawing from the profound insights of spiritual philosophers who recognize the divine nature of consciousness, we will discover how fear represents a temporary forgetting of our connection to the infinite intelligence that sustains all life. Through this remembering, transformation becomes not just possible, but inevitable. As we move through these chapters together, I invite you to approach each teaching with an open heart and gentle self-compassion. Your fears developed for a reason. They were your mind's attempt to protect you. Now, with greater awareness and spiritual maturity, you can thank them for their service and release them with love, making space for the courage, peace, and power that is your natural inheritance. The journey to fearlessness is not the absence of fear, but the presence of something greater, an unshakable trust in the divine order of life and your rightful place within it. Let us begin this sacred journey together, step by gentle step, toward the liberation of your fearless soul. Chapter 1. The Anatomy of Fear. Where does it come from? Fear, in its essence, is neither enemy nor ally, but rather a messenger, a signal from our deeper consciousness, deserving of our gentle attention and understanding. Before we can transform fear, we must first understand its nature, its origins, and the purpose it has served in our lives. Only through this compassionate recognition can we begin the sacred work of transmutation. The dual nature of fear. Fear exists in two fundamental dimensions, the psychological and the energetic. On the psychological level, fear manifests as the mind's protective response to perceived threat. Thomas Troward, in his illuminating Edinburgh lectures, reminds us that the subjective mind is amenable to suggestion, meaning that our subconscious readily accepts and acts upon the impressions we give it, whether accurate or distorted. When we have experienced pain, disappointment, or trauma, the mind creates protective mechanisms, establishing neural pathways that trigger fear responses even when the original threat is long past. Consider for a moment. How many of your current fears are based not on present reality, but on echoes from your past? The child who was once ridiculed may carry the fear of speaking up well into adulthood. The heart once broken may shield itself from love, decades after the wound was inflicted. These psychological patterns become so familiar that we mistake them for our identity, forgetting that they are merely learned responses, not the truth of who we are. The energetic dimension. Beyond the psychological lies, the energetic dimension of fear, a perspective less acknowledged in conventional understanding, but profoundly important in our healing journey. From this vantage point, fear represents a constriction of our life force energy, a tightening of our spiritual field that inhibits the natural flow of divine intelligence through our being. Ralph Waldo Emerson, in his essay on spiritual laws, observed that the universe is represented in every one of its particles. When we are aligned with the universal flow, courage and clarity naturally express through us. Fear emerges when we forget this connection, when we perceive ourselves as separate, vulnerable entities rather than expressions of the infinite whole. In this forgetting, we contract energetically, creating blockages in our spiritual and physical systems that manifest as anxiety, worry, and limitation. The roots of fear. Our fears have three primary origins, each requiring a different approach to healing. First are our ancestral fears, those passed down through generations, carried in our cellular memory and collective consciousness. These may manifest as inexplicable anxieties about abundance, safety, or belonging that seem to have existed before our personal experiences could have shaped them. They are the echoes of our lineage's unresolved traumas and limiting beliefs. Second are our experiential fears, direct responses to painful or threatening events we have personally encountered. The child who nearly drowned may fear water. The adult who faced rejection may fear vulnerability. These fears have a clear causal relationship to our lived experience. Third are our existential fears, the profound anxieties that arise from our awareness of mortality, meaninglessness, isolation, and freedom. These are the fears that philosopher James Allen might describe as the inevitable companions of consciousness itself, the shadows cast by our divine light. The compassionate witness. As we begin to recognize these different dimensions and origins of fear, we must approach them not as enemies to be vanquished, but as aspects of our experience to be witnessed with compassion. Florence Scovel Shinn reminds us that fear is only inverted faith. It is faith in evil instead of good. Our task, then, is not to fight against fear, but to gently redirect our faith toward the good, the true, and the beautiful. Take a moment now to place your hand on your heart and acknowledge whatever fears you carry. Can you feel how they have tried, in their own way, to protect you? Can you sense the love behind even your most limiting patterns, the desire to keep you safe, to prevent further pain? This recognition is the first step toward transformation. The fear-body connection. Our fears do not exist solely in the realm of thought. They take residence in our physical form. Notice how fear manifests in your body, the tightening of your chest, the shallowing of your breath, the tension in your shoulders. These physical responses are not separate from the emotional and spiritual dimensions of fear, but are their direct expression. The body, in its wisdom, remembers what the conscious mind may forget. It holds the imprints of our fears until we are ready to release them. By developing a gentle awareness of these physical manifestations, we create an essential bridge between recognition and transformation. As Emerson wrote, the soul's emphasis is always right, and the body is often the soul's most honest messenger. Beyond the personal. While our journey through fear begins with personal understanding, we must ultimately recognize that many of our fears are not truly our own, but belong to the collective consciousness in which we participate. The fear of lack, of judgment, of failure. These are not unique to your experience, but are shared patterns in the human story. Thomas Troward understood this when he wrote of the universal subjective mind, from which our individual consciousness emerges. When we recognize the transpersonal nature of fear, we begin to hold our experiences with greater spaciousness and less identification. we see that we are not alone in our struggles, and in this recognition, the isolation that intensifies fear begins to dissolve. The gift within fear. As we conclude this exploration of fear's anatomy, let us recognize the profound gift that lies within even our most challenging emotions. Fear, when approached with awareness, becomes not an obstacle, but a doorway to greater consciousness. Each fear points to a place within us that seeks healing, a belief that asks for reconsideration, or a wound that yearns for tender attention. In the words of Emerson, "Every sweet has its sour, every evil its good." The very fears that have limited you contain within them the seeds of your liberation. The fear of rejection reveals your deep desire for connection. The fear of failure points to your capacity for meaningful achievement. The fear of loss illuminates the depth of your capacity to love. As we move forward in our journey together, hold this truth close to your heart. You are not your fears. You are the aware presence that can observe, understand, and ultimately transform them. In this awareness lies your power and your path to the fearless soul that is your birthright. In the next chapter, we will explore how fear influences your vibrational field and, consequently, the reality you experience. For now, rest in the compassionate understanding that your fears have served a purpose, and with loving awareness, they can be thanked and released, making way for the courage that naturally emerges when we remember our true nature. Chapter 2. Fear's vibrational impact, how it lowers frequency and attracts negativity. As we deepen our exploration of fear, we turn now to understand its profound impact on our energetic field, how it shapes not only our inner experience, but the very reality we encounter. This understanding is essential, for as Thomas Troward observed, the law of flotation was not discovered by contemplating the sinking of things. Similarly, we cannot transcend fear by dwelling within its confines, but by understanding its nature and the higher laws that govern our consciousness. The vibrational nature of being. To comprehend fear's impact, we must first acknowledge a fundamental truth. You are, in essence, a vibrational being. Beyond your physical form, beyond even your thoughts and emotions, you exist as a field of energy in constant communication with the universe around you. This is not merely poetic language, but aligns with both ancient wisdom and modern quantum understanding. Emerson intuited this reality when he wrote, "We are all secret believers in the law of compensation," recognizing that there exists an invisible system of energetic exchange governing our experiences. Every thought you think, every emotion you feel, every belief you hold resonates at a particular frequency, creating ripples through your energetic field that extend far beyond your conscious awareness. Fear, in this understanding, is not simply an emotion, but a vibrational state, one that significantly constricts your energetic field and lowers your overall frequency. When you exist in a state of fear, whether acute or chronic, you are quite literally vibrating at a different rate than when you dwell in states of love, peace, or courage. The vibrational scale of consciousness. Consider for a moment that human consciousness operates across a spectrum of frequencies. At the lower end of this spectrum reside emotions like shame, guilt, apathy, grief, and fear, states that contract our energy and diminish our connection to divine intelligence. At the higher end exist states of courage, willingness, acceptance, joy, peace, and enlightenment, vibrations that expand our field and strengthen our connection to Source. Fear, existing near the lower end of this scale, acts as a powerful constrictor of your natural energy flow. When fear becomes your dominant emotional state, it's as though you're attempting to power your entire life through a severely narrowed channel. The result is a diminished capacity to receive inspiration, recognize opportunities, and experience the natural abundance that is your birthright. James Allen understood this principle profoundly when he wrote, "A man's mind may be likened to a garden, which may be intelligently cultivated or allowed to run wild. But whether cultivated or neglected, it must and will bring forth. If no useful seeds are put into it, then an abundance of useless weed seeds will fall therein and will continue to produce their kind. Fear as attractor. The vibrational nature of fear extends beyond your internal experience. It functions as a powerful attractor in your external reality. This occurs through what we might call the law of resonance, whereby like energies attract like experiences. When your field is dominated by fear, you become magnetically attuned to circumstances, people, and situations that match or reinforce that vibrational state. This is not punishment or some cosmic judgment, but simply the operation of natural law. Just as a radio receiver tuned to 96.5 FM cannot receive broadcasts from 103.7 FM, when your consciousness is tuned to the frequency of fear, you cannot readily receive the experiences, inspirations, and connections that vibrate at the frequency of courage or peace. Florence Scovel Shinn expressed this truth with characteristic clarity. Your word is your wand. The words you speak create your own destiny. Then, when fear infiltrates your words, thoughts, and feelings, it casts a particular kind of spell, not through some mystical process, but through the very practical mechanism of selective perception and energetic attraction. The self-perpetuating cycle. What makes fear particularly challenging to transcend is its self-perpetuating nature. When we vibrate at the frequency of fear, we attract experiences that seem to validate our fearful perspective. These experiences then strengthen our fear, lowering our vibration further and attracting additional evidence for our fearful worldview. This cycle can continue indefinitely until we consciously intervene. Consider how this might manifest in daily life. A person fearing rejection may unconsciously communicate hesitation and guardedness, which others intuitively sense, causing them to respond with caution or distance. The fearful person then interprets this response as confirmation of their unworthiness, deepening their fear and creating even more pronounced patterns of self-protection that further alienate others. The tragedy in this cycle is not just the suffering it creates, but the opportunities for connection, growth, and joy that remain perpetually out of reach. As Emerson noted, fear always springs from ignorance, specifically ignorance of our true nature and the higher laws that govern our experience. The physical manifestation. The vibrational impact of fear extends into the physical body, affecting not just our emotional state, but our physiological functioning. When fear becomes chronic, the body remains in a persistent state of stress, with elevated cortisol levels, shallow breathing, muscle tension, and compromised immune function. Modern research confirms what ancient wisdom has long taught. Prolonged states of fear and anxiety create measurable changes in our cellular health, genetic expression, and neurological functioning. The body, designed to experience stress as a temporary state, suffers when fear becomes our baseline condition. This understanding is not meant to create additional fear about fear itself, but rather to illuminate the profound importance of the inner work we are undertaking. As we learn to transmute fear into higher vibrational states, we are not merely changing our emotional experience, we are literally rewiring our neurology and recalibrating our physical health. The contagious nature of fear. Another dimension of fear's vibrational impact is its contagious quality. Fear resonates not only within our individual field, but can be transmitted to others through what scientists now recognize as emotional contagion. When we exist in a state of fear, we unconsciously broadcast that frequency, affecting the emotional and energetic states of those around us. This understanding carries profound implications for our responsibility to manage our inner state. As Troward observed, the law of cause and effect is not suspended by our ignorance of it, and this applies equally to the invisible influence we exert on our shared field of consciousness. Yet this contagious quality also offers hope, for just as fear can be transmitted, so too can courage, peace, and love. As you learn to elevate your own vibrational state, you become a living invitation for others to do the same, not through preaching or persuasion, but through the silent power of resonance. Beyond negativity, the higher perspective. It would be incomplete to discuss fear's vibrational impact without acknowledging the greater truth, that beneath and beyond all fear lies the uninterrupted current of divine intelligence, what Emerson called the oversoul and Troward termed the universal subjective mind. This infinite field of loving consciousness is our true nature and original vibration. Fear does not create this higher frequency, but merely obscures our awareness of it, like clouds temporarily hiding the ever-present sun. The work of transformation is not about manufacturing courage, but removing the obstructions to its natural expression. As we release fear, we do not gain something new, but return to what has always been our essence. This perspective offers profound hope, for it means that no matter how deeply entrenched your fears may seem, they remain temporary distortions in your energy field, not your fundamental reality. The higher vibration of your true nature is always present, always accessible, waiting only for your recognition and alignment. Practical awareness. As we conclude this chapter, I invite you to develop a gentle awareness of fear's vibrational impact in your own experience. Notice throughout your day how different emotional states affect your energy level, your perception, and the quality of your encounters with others. Without judgment, observe how fear constricts and how courage expands. This awareness itself begins to dissolve fear's grip. For as James Allen wrote, "The greatest achievement was at first, and for a time, a dream. The oak sleeps in the acorn, the bird waits in the egg, and in the highest vision of the soul, a waking angel stirs." Your awareness is the first light of dawn, awakening you to the greater possibilities that lie beyond fear's limited vibration. In our next chapter, we will explore how to identify your personal fear matrix, the specific patterns and triggers that have shaped your relationship with fear. Through this understanding, we will prepare the ground for the profound transformation that awaits you as you reclaim your natural state of courage, peace, and power. Remember, dear one, that every step you take toward understanding fear's nature is simultaneously a step toward your liberation from its grip. The very fact that you can observe fear's vibrational impact means you are already beginning to transcend it, for the observer is always free from that which is observed. Chapter 3: Identifying your fear matrix, uncovering core fears and triggers. As we journey deeper into understanding fear, we arrive at a crucial threshold, the exploration of your unique fear matrix. Like a fingerprint, each person's relationship with fear carries a distinct pattern, shaped by individual experiences, inherited tendencies, and personal meaning-making. In this chapter, we will gently illuminate the specific architecture of your fears, not to reinforce them, but to bring them into the light of awareness where transformation becomes possible. The nature of the fear matrix. Your fear matrix is the interconnected web of core fears, triggers, beliefs, and protective mechanisms that operates largely beneath your conscious awareness. This matrix doesn't exist in isolation, but forms an integral part of what Thomas Troward called your mental atmosphere, the subjective lens through which you perceive and interpret reality. Emerson understood this when he wrote, "People seem not to see that their opinion of the world is also a confession of character." Indeed, what we fear reveals as much about our inner landscape as it does about the external world. Our fears are not random, but form coherent patterns that, once recognized, offer profound insights into our deepest needs, wounds, and beliefs. The core fears. At the center of your fear matrix lie what we might call core fears, the fundamental anxieties that give rise to countless secondary fears and defensive behaviors. While each person's experience is unique, most core fears can be understood as variations on several universal themes. The fear of abandonment, the profound anxiety that you will be left alone, unsupported, or rejected by those you need and love. This core fear often manifests as clingy behavior, people-pleasing, difficulty with boundaries, or paradoxically, preemptive rejection of others. The fear of unworthiness, the deep-seated belief that you are fundamentally flawed, inadequate, or undeserving of love and success. This fear commonly expresses as perfectionism, overachievement, self-sabotage, or avoidance of opportunities. The fear of powerlessness, the dread of being controlled, violated, or unable to protect yourself or direct your life. This core fear may surface as controlling behavior, difficulty with trust, resistance to vulnerability, or patterns of domination or submission. The fear of meaninglessness, the existential anxiety that your life lacks purpose, impact, or significance. This fear often drives workaholism, status-seeking, or conversely, nihilistic withdrawal from engagement with life. The fear of annihilation, the primal terror of non-existence, whether physical death or the dissolution of your sense of self. This core fear frequently underlies health anxiety, identity rigidity, or excessive concern with security and safety. As you read these descriptions, notice which resonate most deeply with your experience. You may find that one predominates in your fear matrix, or you might recognize several operating in different areas of your life. There is no judgment in this recognition, only the compassionate light of awareness illuminating what has often operated in shadow. Inherited fears. Some elements of your fear matrix may not originate from your personal experience, but from what we might call your ancestral inheritance. As James Allen observed, man is made or unmade by himself. In the armory of thought, he forges the weapons by which he destroys himself. He also fashions the tools with which he builds for himself heavenly mansions of joy and strength and peace. Yet some of the thought patterns we wield were first forged by our ancestors and passed down through family systems, cultural conditioning, and even, some research suggests, through epigenetic mechanisms that affect how our genes express themselves. Consider for a moment, what fears were prevalent in your family of origin? What anxieties seem to echo through generations? Perhaps a fear of financial insecurity stemming from ancestors who experienced poverty, or anxiety around self-expression inherited from forebears who lived under oppressive conditions. These inherited fears often feel particularly mysterious because they may lack obvious connection to your direct experience. Recognizing the inherited aspects of your fear matrix is not about assigning blame, but about releasing yourself from carrying burdens that were never truly yours. As Florence Scovel Shinn reminds us, the game of life is a game of boomerangs. Our thoughts, deeds, and words return to us sooner or later with astounding accuracy. By identifying inherited fears, you can consciously choose which patterns to continue and which to compassionately release. Your personal triggers. While core fears form the foundation of your fear matrix, triggers are the specific stimuli that activate these deeper anxieties in daily life. A trigger might be a particular type of situation, a certain tone of voice, a physical sensation, or even a time of day or season that unconsciously signals threat to your system. Triggers develop through a process of association where neutral stimuli become linked with painful experiences. The mind, in its attempt to protect you, creates these associations as an early warning system. However, triggers often become overgeneralized, causing fear responses in situations that objectively pose no threat. To identify your triggers, consider what specific circumstances reliably activate your fear response. When do you find yourself suddenly anxious, angry, withdrawn, or defensive? These emotional shifts often indicate that a trigger has been activated, momentarily catapulting you from present reality into a fear-based reaction rooted in past experience. The belief structure. Supporting your core fears and triggers is a constellation of beliefs, the stories and interpretations that give meaning to your experiences. These beliefs often take the form of absolutes. I must always be perfect to be worthy of love. People will inevitably abandon me if they see the real me. The world is fundamentally unsafe. I am responsible for everyone else's feelings. Emerson noted that the ancestor of every action is a thought, and indeed, these fear-based beliefs become the ancestors of countless limiting behaviors and experiences. They form an invisible architecture that shapes your perceptions, decisions, and actions far more powerfully than most realize. What makes these beliefs particularly challenging to identify is that we rarely experience them as beliefs at all, but rather as self-evident truths about reality. They operate not as conscious thoughts, but as the unquestioned background against which all thoughts arise. As Troward observed, the subjective mind reasons deductively only, meaning it faithfully executes whatever premises we have consciously or unconsciously accepted. The protective mechanisms. Completing your fear matrix are the protective mechanisms you've developed to manage your core fears and avoid triggering situations. These mechanisms include behaviors like avoidance, control, perfectionism, people-pleasing, aggression, dissociation, and addictive patterns, all strategies that, at their root, represent attempts to create safety in a world perceived as threatening. These protective mechanisms often begin as creative adaptations to difficult circumstances, particularly in childhood, when our options were limited. The child who developed hypervigilance in an unpredictable environment was using the best strategy available at the time. The person who learned to hide their authentic feelings in a critical household was finding a way to survive emotional threat. The tragedy is not in having developed these mechanisms, but in continuing to employ them long after they've outlived their usefulness, often at tremendous cost to our well-being and potential. As James Allen wrote, "Men are anxious to improve their circumstances, but are unwilling to improve themselves. They therefore remain bound." Mapping your personal fear matrix. Now, with gentle curiosity and compassion, I invite you to begin mapping your own fear matrix. Find a quiet moment and a private space where you can reflect honestly without interruption. Perhaps light a candle to symbolize bringing awareness to what has existed in shadow. Then, consider the following questions, either mentally or ideally through writing. 1. What situations consistently trigger fear, anxiety, or strong defensive reactions in your life? 2. Beneath these reactions, what core fears can you identify? What are you truly afraid might happen? 3. What beliefs or truths about yourself, others, or the world seem to underlie these fears? 4. What protective behaviors have you developed to manage these fears? How might these very protections be limiting your life? 5. Can you identify any fears that seem to have been inherited rather than directly learned from your own experience? As you explore these questions, approach yourself with the same tenderness you would offer a beloved child. There is no benefit in harsh judgment or criticism. Remember that your fear matrix developed not out of weakness, but as your mind's attempt to protect you. Every aspect of it deserves acknowledgement and respect, even as you prepare to transform it. The gift of self-knowledge. This process of mapping your fear matrix is not merely an intellectual exercise, but a profound act of self-liberation. As Emerson wrote, "He who knows that power is inborn, that he is weak because he has looked for good out of him and elsewhere, and so perceiving, throws himself unhesitatingly on his thought, instantly rights himself." In identifying the specific architecture of your fears, you begin to create space between your awareness and these patterns. No longer completely identified with your fears, you can begin to witness them with compassion rather than being unconsciously driven by them. This witnessing consciousness is the first and perhaps most crucial step toward transformation. Florence Scovel Shinn understood this when she wrote, "Every great work, every big accomplishment has been brought into manifestation through holding to the vision, and often just before the big achievement comes apparent failure and discouragement." The process of facing your fear matrix may indeed bring temporary discomfort as you acknowledge patterns long held in shadow, but this apparent setback is actually the prelude to breakthrough, beyond identification. As we conclude this chapter, I invite you to hold a powerful truth. You are not your fear matrix. You are the aware consciousness that can observe, understand, and ultimately transform these patterns. Your fears, no matter how long-standing or intense, are temporary configurations in your mental and energetic field, not your essential nature. Thomas Troward expressed this profound truth when he wrote, "The spirit is that which contains all the essential qualities of the thing in which it dwells. The divine spirit that is your true essence contains not fear but courage, not limitation but infinite potential, not separation but profound connection to all of life." In our next chapter, we will explore how to face the shadow aspects that your fear matrix has kept hidden, bringing them into the light of conscious awareness, where healing becomes not just possible, but inevitable. For now, rest in the compassionate understanding that seeing your patterns clearly is already the beginning of their transformation. Remember, dear one, that this journey through the landscape of fear is ultimately a journey home to your fearless nature. Each step of honest self-recognition brings you closer to the truth of who you are beyond all fear, a truth that has been waiting patiently for your return. Chapter 4: Facing the Shadow. Techniques for confronting and acknowledging fear. Having mapped the architecture of your fear matrix, we now arrive at perhaps the most courageous part of our journey, directly facing the shadow aspects of consciousness that fear has kept hidden. This chapter is not about battling against fear, but about turning toward it with presence, compassion, and a willingness to see what has been avoided. As Carl Jung wisely noted, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. The nature of the shadow. The shadow, in essence, represents those aspects of ourselves that we have deemed unacceptable, dangerous, or shameful, parts we have pushed into the unconscious rather than integrate into our conscious identity. These shadow elements don't disappear when denied. Rather, they operate autonomously, often sabotaging our conscious intentions and erupting in moments of stress or vulnerability. Emerson intuited this truth when he wrote, "The ancestor of every action is a thought." Our shadow thoughts, though hidden from awareness, remain powerful ancestors to our experiences and behaviors. The work of shadow integration involves bringing these hidden aspects into consciousness, not to indulge them, but to transform their energy through acknowledgement and understanding. The shadow and fear. Fear and shadow exist in a reciprocal relationship. Our core fears often drive the creation of shadow aspects as we disown parts of ourselves that seem threatening to our safety or belonging. Simultaneously, these shadow elements generate more fear as they operate beyond conscious control, creating patterns we don't understand and outcomes we didn't consciously choose. Thomas Troward observed that the subjective mind is amenable to suggestion, meaning that what we repress doesn't simply disappear, but continues to respond to unconscious programming. When we deny aspects of our experience, our anger, vulnerability, power, or desire, these energies don't cease to exist but express themselves in distorted ways that often manifest as chronic fear and limitation. The courage to see. The first step in shadow work is developing the willingness to see what has been hidden, to turn toward rather than away from discomfort. This requires a particular quality of courage, not the brash courage that confronts external threats, but the subtle bravery that allows us to face our internal landscape with honesty and compassion. Florence Scovel. Shin understood this when she wrote, "Your word is your wand." The words we speak to ourselves as we approach our shadow determine whether this work becomes healing or simply re-traumatizing. The affirmation, "I am safe to see the truth of my experience," can become a powerful wand, creating a container of safety for this exploration. The witness consciousness. Central to shadow work is the cultivation of witness consciousness, the aware presence that can observe your thoughts, emotions, and sensations without becoming completely identified with them. This witness is neither judging nor fixing, but simply holding space for whatever arises with compassionate attention. Emerson pointed toward this capacity when he wrote, "The soul becomes," suggesting that our essential nature transcends the contents of consciousness, while simultaneously containing them. From this perspective, even your deepest fears are not who you are, but experiences moving through your awareness, clouds passing through the vast sky of your being. To strengthen this witness consciousness, practice moments throughout your day where you simply notice your experience without labeling it as good or bad. When fear arises, can you observe it with the same neutral attention you might give to the sound of rain or the sensation of your breath? This capacity to witness creates the space in which transformation becomes possible. Techniques for shadow integration. Let us now explore specific practices for facing and integrating the shadow aspects of your fear. Each of these approaches offers a different doorway into this work. Experiment with them to discover which resonates most powerfully with your unique temperament and circumstances. 1. The practice of conscious projection recognition. Much of what triggers intense fear in us represents disowned aspects of ourselves projected onto others or situations. When someone's behavior generates a disproportionate fear response, it often points to a shadow element seeking recognition. James Allen understood this when he wrote, "Circumstance does not make the man, it reveals him to himself." Our reactions reveal not just the external trigger, but the internal content being acted. The practice involves noticing when you experience an intense fear reaction to someone or something, asking yourself, what quality or potential am I seeing in this person, situation that I've disowned in myself? Considering how this disowned aspect might be seeking expression in your life, exploring how you might consciously integrate this quality in a healthy way. For example, if you feel inexplicable fear around assertive people, you might discover a disowned capacity for healthy assertion within yourself. By consciously reclaiming this quality, the external trigger gradually loses its power. 2. The dialogue with fear. This powerful practice involves directly engaging with fear as if it were a distinct personality within your psyche, which in many ways it is. Through respectful dialogue, you can uncover the deeper wisdom and protective intention behind even your most limiting fears. Find a quiet space where you won't be disturbed. Close your eyes and imagine your fear taking form before you, not as a monstrous entity, but as a part of yourself that has been trying to protect you in the only way it knows how. Then, ask your fear, what are you trying to protect me from? Listen deeply to the response that arises without judgment. Ask, what do you need from me to feel safe? Ask, what would help you trust me to handle this situation? Finally, ask, how might we work together rather than against each other? Record this dialogue through writing or speaking aloud. You may be surprised by the wisdom that emerges when fear is approached not as an enemy, but as a misguided protector deserving of understanding. 3. Somatic shadow work. Fear doesn't exist solely in the realm of thought, but lives in the body as tension, constriction, and disrupted energy flow. Somatic shadow work involves bringing awareness to these physical manifestations as gateways to the unconscious mind. Thomas Troward noted that the physical is the outward and visible expression of the inner and invisible principle. Our bodies faithfully express what our conscious minds often deny. The practice involves scanning your body to locate where fear is held physically, bringing gentle, curious attention to this area, allowing any images, memories, or emotions to arise without resistance. Breathing into the constricted area, creating space for release. Asking this part of your body what it needs to feel safe and supported. This approach honors the wisdom of the body as a direct pathway to unconscious material, bypassing the mind's tendency toward rationalization and avoidance. 4. Shadow journaling. Writing provides a powerful container for shadow exploration, allowing unconscious material to emerge in a structured format. This practice creates a private, safe space for expressing thoughts and feelings that might otherwise remain hidden. Create a special journal dedicated to this work, one that feels secure and private. Then, begin writing with a prompt such as, "What I'm most afraid to acknowledge about myself is," or, "If I weren't afraid, I would." Write continuously without censoring or editing. Allow whatever emerges to flow onto the page, even if it seems irrational or contradictory. After writing, read what emerged with compassionate awareness. Notice any insights or shifts in perspective that occur. As Florence Scovel Shinn observed, "The game of life is a game of boomerangs. Our thoughts, deeds, and words return to us sooner or later with astounding accuracy." Shadow journaling allows us to consciously engage with thoughts that would otherwise operate unseen, returning to us as seemingly external circumstances. The practice of radical honesty. Perhaps the most direct approach to shadow integration is the practice of radical honesty, first with yourself and then when appropriate, with trusted others. This involves acknowledging thoughts, feelings, and desires that contradict your conscious self-image or social persona. Emerson championed this approach when he wrote, "To be yourself in a world that is constantly trying to make you something else is the greatest accomplishment." The practice involves noticing when you're presenting a false self to avoid fear, acknowledging the authentic feeling or thought you're hiding, asking yourself what you fear would happen if you were fully honest, practicing expressing your truth, first in safe contexts, gradually expanding your capacity for authenticity in wider circles. This practice doesn't mean expressing every thought impulsively, but rather developing the discernment to know your truth and the courage to live from it when doing so serves your highest good and the good of others. Navigating resistance. As you engage with these shadow practices, you will inevitably encounter resistance, the mind's attempt to maintain the status quo by avoiding discomfort. This resistance may manifest as sudden fatigue, distraction, intellectualization, or even physical symptoms that pull your attention elsewhere. James Allen understood this when he wrote, "For true success, it is necessary to accept oneself, and the silencing of all those tendencies which work against self-trust is the beginning of wisdom." Resistance represents these very tendencies working against self-trust and self-knowledge. When resistance arises, approach it with the same compassionate awareness you're developing toward fear itself. Rather than fighting against resistance, acknowledge its presence. "I notice I'm feeling strong resistance right now." Then gently inquire, "What am I trying to protect myself from feeling or knowing?" This inquiry often reveals deeper layers of fear that, once acknowledged, begin to dissolve. The alchemy of shadow integration. As you continue this work of facing fear through shadow integration, you participate in a profound alchemical process. The transformation of lead into gold, of unconscious limitation into conscious power. This alchemy doesn't occur through force or control, but through the patient application of awareness, acceptance, and love to what has been denied. Thomas Troward described this process when he wrote about the law of growth that governs all evolution of consciousness. Just as a plant naturally grows toward light when provided with proper conditions, your consciousness naturally evolves toward greater freedom when you create conditions of honest self-recognition. This evolution isn't about becoming someone different, but about revealing what has always been present beneath the layers of fear and conditioning. As you integrate shadow aspects, you don't add anything new to yourself, but rather remove the obstructions to your natural wholeness and power. The compassionate container. Throughout this shadow work, remember that the quality of awareness you bring to the process determines its outcome. Approaching your fears with judgment or impatience only drives them deeper into shadow. The essential quality needed is compassion, the ability to hold even your most challenging aspects with understanding and care. Florence Scovel Shinn captured this truth when she wrote, "The invisible forces are ever working for man, who is always pulling the strings himself, though he does not know it. Owing to the vibratory power of words, whatever man voices, he begins to attract." Thal. When you consistently voice compassion toward your fears and shadow aspects, you begin to attract experiences of integration and healing. Imagine creating an internal compassionate container, a sacred space within your consciousness where all parts of you are welcome, even those that have remained hidden in fear. This container is not about indulgence or identification with limiting patterns, but about the transformative power of unconditional presence. The gradual unfoldment. Shadow integration is not a destination, but an ongoing process of unfoldment. As Emerson noted, life is a journey, not a destination. Each layer of fear that you acknowledge creates space for deeper layers to emerge, not as punishment, but as opportunity for more profound healing and freedom. Trust the wisdom of this gradual unfoldment. Your psyche will not reveal more than you're ready to integrate at any given time. By approaching this work with patience and trust in the process, you allow transformation to occur at the pace that serves your highest good. As we conclude this chapter, I invite you to recognize the profound courage you demonstrate by willingly facing what many spend lifetimes avoiding. In turning toward your fears rather than away from them, you participate in not just personal healing, but the evolution of collective consciousness. In our next chapter, we will explore how the practice of presence, of fully inhabiting the now, creates the foundation for dissolving anxiety and experiencing the natural fearlessness that is your birthright. For now, rest in the knowledge that each moment of honest self-recognition is itself a victory of light over darkness, of consciousness over conditioning, of love over fear. Chapter 5: The Power of Presence, Using Mindfulness to Dissolve Anxiety. Having explored the architecture of fear and begun the sacred work of shadow integration, we now turn to what may be the most transformative practice available to us, the cultivation of presence. In this chapter, we will discover how the simple yet profound act of fully inhabiting the present moment creates the conditions for fear and anxiety to naturally dissolve, revealing the peace that is your natural state. The nature of presence. Presence, at its essence, is the art of being fully here, now, aware, awake, and engaged with what is actually happening in this moment, rather than lost in thoughts about the past or future. It is, as Thomas Troward might describe it, the realization of the I am, the recognition of yourself as the aware consciousness in which all experiences arise. This state of presence is not something we need to create or achieve, but rather our natural condition when the mind's habitual movement away from now is recognized and gently released. As Emerson observed, the reason why the world lacks unity and lies broken and in heaps is because man is disunited with himself. Presence is the reunification of the self with itself, the end of the inner fragmentation that fuels chronic fear and anxiety. Fear lives in time. To understand why presence is so powerful in dissolving fear, we must recognize a fundamental truth. Fear cannot exist in the present moment. Fear, by its very nature, is a projection into an imagined future, or a reliving of past pain. When we are fully present, we discover that in this actual moment, right here and now, there is rarely anything to fear. James Allen understood this when he wrote, "The soul attracts that which it secretly harbors, that which it loves, and also that which it fears. Our fears are almost always about what might happen, or what has happened, not what is happening in the immediacy of now." By learning to anchor awareness in the present, we naturally interrupt the mind's tendency to generate fear through time-based thinking. The anxiety-time connection. Anxiety, which we might understand as chronic, low-grade fear, thrives particularly in the gap between now and then. It feeds on thoughts of what if and if only, creating an endless stream of scenarios that exist nowhere but in our imagination. As these thought patterns become habitual, they create a persistent background of unease that colors our entire experience. Florence Scovel Shinn captured this dynamic when she wrote, "Fear is man's only adversary." Indeed, fear becomes our adversary primarily through pulling our attention from the fullness of now into the ghostly realm of mental projection. The practice of presence counteracts this tendency by continually bringing awareness back to the concrete reality of this moment, the only moment in which we can actually live and act. The practice of mindful awareness. Mindfulness, as a specific form of presence practice, involves bringing non-judgmental awareness to our moment-to-moment experience. Rather than being lost in the content of thoughts, we learn to witness the process of thinking itself, along with the sensations, emotions, and perceptions that constitute our lived experience. This practice doesn't require special conditions or elaborate techniques. As Emerson noted, the purpose of life is not to be happy. It is to be useful, to be honorable, to be compassionate, to have it make some difference that you have lived and lived well. Mindfulness allows us to live well by living consciously, aware of both our inner landscape and our impact on the world around us. Let us explore several specific mindfulness practices that are particularly effective for dissolving fear and anxiety. 1. The anchor of breath. The breath offers perhaps the most accessible anchor for presence practice. Always available, requiring no special equipment or conditions, The breath serves as a bridge between conscious and unconscious processes, a doorway into the present moment. To practice, bring gentle attention to the natural flow of your breath. Notice the sensations of breathing, the coolness of air entering your nostrils, the expansion of your lungs, the warmth of the outbreath. When your mind wanders into thoughts of past or future, gently return awareness to the breath. Practice this for just a few minutes at first, gradually extending the duration as your capacity for presence grows. Thomas Troward might describe this practice as aligning with the great, breathing, the universal rhythm that sustains all life. In synchronizing conscious awareness with this fundamental process, we naturally calm the nervous system and create conditions for fear to dissolve. 2. The body scan practice. Our bodies exist only in the present. They cannot project into the future or dwell in the past. By bringing awareness to physical sensations, we naturally anchor ourselves in now, interrupting the time-based thinking that generates fear. The practice involves beginning at either the top of your head or your feet, slowly moving attention through each part of your body, noticing sensations with curious, non-judgmental awareness, acknowledging areas of tension or discomfort without trying to change them, recognizing areas that feel neutral or pleasant, allowing yourself to fully experience these sensations, completing the scan by feeling your body as a whole, present in this moment. This practice is particularly powerful for anxiety, as it interrupts the mind's tendency to spiral into worry by continually returning awareness to concrete, present moment experience. 3. The practice of sensory awareness. Our senses naturally function in the now. We can only see, hear, touch, taste, and smell what is present in this moment. By deliberately engaging our senses, we create multiple anchors for presence that can dissolve fear almost immediately. Florence Scovel Shinn understood this when she wrote about perfect self-expression, the natural state of being fully engaged with life. The practice involves pausing several times throughout your day to fully engage one or more senses, noticing 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste, bringing full attention to the act of seeing, touching, hearing, smelling, or tasting, as if experiencing these sensations for the first time. Noticing how this sensory engagement naturally quiets mental chatter and brings you into the present. This practice can be especially helpful during moments of acute anxiety, as it provides immediate grounding in concrete reality rather than abstract worry. 4. The witness practice. Perhaps the most profound mindfulness technique involves cultivating witness consciousness, the aware presence that can observe thoughts, emotions, and sensations without becoming identified with them. This practice directly addresses the core mechanism of fear, identification with thought. Emerson pointed toward this capacity when he wrote, "The ancestor of every action is a thought. By learning to witness thoughts rather than automatically believe and act upon them, we create space between awareness and mental content, space in which freedom can emerge." To practice, sit quietly and notice the flow of thoughts arising in consciousness. Rather than following the content of thoughts, observe the process of thinking itself. When you notice yourself becoming caught in a thought, gently label it: thinking, planning, worrying, remembering. Return to the position of the witness, the aware presence that notices but is not defined by mental activity. Extend this witnessing to emotions and sensations, recognizing feeling angry rather than "I am angry," experiencing anxiety rather than "I am anxious." This subtle shift from identification to witnessing creates profound transformation in our relationship with fear. No longer completely believing the mind's projections, we discover the spacious awareness that is our true nature beyond all fear. 5. The practice of conscious naming. Language shapes perception in powerful ways. By consciously naming our experience with precision and non-judgment, we bring the light of awareness to unconscious patterns, including those that generate fear. James Allen understood this when he wrote, "All that a man achieves and all that he fails to achieve is the direct result of his own thoughts." The practice of conscious naming helps us recognize the specific thoughts that create our experience of fear, allowing us to relate to them differently. The practice involves, when you notice fear arising, pause to name the specific quality of the experience. Anxiety is present, or fear thoughts are happening now. Use language that creates space rather than identification. Experiencing worry rather than "I am worried." Notice the stories or predictions generating the fear. The mind is creating a story about rejection, or there's a prediction of failure happening. Acknowledge the physical sensations accompanying fear with specific neutral language. Tightness in the chest is present, or the heart is beating quickly. This practice doesn't deny or suppress fear, but brings precise awareness to its components, creating the conditions for natural dissolution rather than reinforcement. Presence in daily life. While formal mindfulness practices provide essential training, the true power of presence emerges as we integrate it into daily life. Every moment, whether washing dishes, conversing with a friend, working on a project, or navigating a challenge, offers an opportunity to practice presence and interrupt fear-based patterns. Thomas Troward described this as living in the spirit of the originating principle, recognizing that the divine intelligence expressed through all life is always operating in the now. By anchoring awareness in present activity rather than mental projection, we align with this originating principle and naturally access the peace and clarity that are its qualities. Consider how you might bring mindful awareness to routine activities. When eating, can you fully experience the flavors, textures, and nourishment of food? While walking, can you feel each step, the movement of your body, the contact with the ground? During conversations, can you listen fully rather than rehearsing your response or judging what's being said? When working, can you bring complete attention to the task at hand rather than dividing awareness between multiple concerns? Each of these moments becomes an opportunity to practice presence and interrupt the habitual patterns that generate fear and anxiety. Working with fear as it arises. Even with consistent presence practice, fear will still arise. It is, after all, a natural human emotion with evolutionary value. The difference lies in how we relate to fear when it appears. Rather than being overwhelmed by it or fighting against it, presence allows us to work skillfully with fear as it emerges. Florence Scovel Shinn offered wisdom for this approach when she wrote, "Nothing stands between man and his highest ideals and every desire of his heart, but doubt and fear." The key is not to eliminate fear entirely, but to recognize it without being defined or limited by it. When fear arises, 1. Acknowledge its presence. With gentle awareness, I notice fear is arising. 2. Locate the fear in your body, bringing curious attention to physical sensations. 3. Breathe with the sensations, creating space around them rather than contracting. 4. Recognize the thoughts generating fear, witnessing them without automatically believing them. 5. Remind yourself of the present reality, noting what is actually happening now versus what the mind projects. 6. Take appropriate action. From presence rather than reaction, responding to what is rather than what might be. This approach doesn't deny fear, but transforms our relationship with it, preventing it from controlling our perceptions and behaviors. The paradox of acceptance. A seeming paradox emerges in presence practice. The more fully we accept fear when it arises, the less power it holds over us. Resistance to fear, trying to eliminate or suppress it, often intensifies the very experience we're trying to avoid. Acceptance, by contrast, creates the conditions for natural transformation. James Allen captured this truth when he wrote, "The more tranquil a man becomes, the greater is his success, his influence, his power for good." Calmness of mind is one of the beautiful jewels of wisdom. This tranquility emerges not from denying difficult emotions, but from embracing them within the spacious awareness of presence. Acceptance doesn't mean resignation to limitation, but rather acknowledging what is as the necessary starting point for genuine change. By fully acknowledging fear when it arises, we prevent it from going underground where it would continue to operate unseen, and we create the possibility for conscious choice rather than unconscious reaction. The deeper dimensions of presence. As your practice of presence deepens, you may begin to experience what Emerson called the oversoul, the recognition of a consciousness that transcends the individual mind and connects all beings. This experience naturally dissolves fear by revealing its illusory nature, showing that the separate self we've been defending was never our true identity. Thomas Troward pointed toward this understanding when he wrote about the recognition of yourself as an individualization of the universal mind. In moments of deep presence, the boundaries between self and other, inner and outer, soften and dissolve, revealing a unity in which fear cannot maintain its grip. This is not a belief to adopt, but an experience that naturally emerges through consistent presence practice. As the identification with thought loosens, what remains is an aware spaciousness that has never been touched by fear, your true nature beyond all conditioning and limitation. Presence as a path of courage. The practice of presence represents perhaps the most profound act of courage available to us, the willingness to be with what is, exactly as it is, without escape or evasion. This is not passive acceptance of circumstances that require change, but the recognition that effective action can only emerge from clear seeing, which presence makes possible. Florence Scovel Shinn understood this when she wrote, "The invisible forces are ever working for man who is always pulling the strings himself, though he does not know it." Presence allows us to become conscious of the strings we've been pulling, revealing how our attention and energy have been creating the very experiences we fear. As we conclude this chapter, I invite you to recognize that the peace you seek in the future is available only in the present. The freedom from fear you imagine achieving someday can be discovered only in this moment. The courage you hope to develop over time emerges naturally when you are fully here, now, present with what is, open to what might be. In our next chapter, we will explore how to reframe reality, shifting perception to reduce fear's power and access new possibilities. This work builds directly on the foundation of presence we've established here, for only from the ground of now can we consciously choose how to interpret and respond to our experience. For now, I invite you to practice presence in even the simplest moments of your day, feeling the warmth of water on your hands as you wash them, noticing the sensation of your feet touching the ground as you walk, experiencing the fullness of your breath as you sit quietly. In these ordinary moments of extraordinary awareness, fear naturally dissolves, revealing the peace that has been here all along. Chapter 6. Reframing reality, shifting perception to reduce fear's power. Having established the foundation of presence, we now explore the transformative practice of reframing, the conscious act of shifting how we perceive and interpret our experiences. As we'll discover, fear derives much of its power not from circumstances themselves, but from the meaning we assign to them. By learning to reframe our perceptions, we can fundamentally alter our relationship with fear and access new dimensions of courage and possibility. The nature of perception. To understand the power of reframing, we must first recognize a profound truth. We never experience reality directly, but always through the lens of perception. As Thomas Troward observed, the law of growth is that the power that knows itself in you can only work in accordance with its own nature, and its nature is to work by a law of growth from the subjective into the objective. Our subjective perceptions literally create the objective experience we call reality. This understanding is not abstract philosophy, but practical wisdom with immediate implications for our relationship with fear. If our perceptions shape our reality, then by consciously shifting these perceptions, we can transform our experience, including our experience of fear itself. The meaning-making mind. The human mind is, above all, a meaning-making instrument. We instinctively assign significance to everything we encounter, interpreting events, words, and sensations according to established patterns. These interpretations happen so quickly and automatically that we rarely notice them, experiencing instead only their emotional consequences. Emerson recognized this when he wrote, "We are always getting ready to live but never living." Much of our suffering comes from living not in direct experience, but in our interpretations of experience. Stories about what events mean about us, others, and the world. These stories, when fear-based, create a reality in which threat seems omnipresent and safety perpetually elusive. The architecture of reframing. Reframing involves consciously shifting these interpretations, not denying reality, but choosing to view it through a different lens. This practice doesn't require ignoring difficulties or pretending everything is perfect. Rather, it involves finding more empowering, expansive ways to understand our experiences, particularly those that trigger fear. Florence Scovel. Shin captured this approach perfectly when she wrote, "Your word is your wand. The words you speak create your own destiny." The practice of reframing gives us conscious access to this wand, allowing us to speak new words internally and externally that create new possibilities. Let us explore several powerful reframing practices that can transform your relationship with fear. 1. The practice of perspective expansion. Fear typically narrows our perspective, creating tunnel vision focused exclusively on potential threat. By deliberately expanding our perspective, we counteract this narrowing effect and access greater clarity and calm. James Allen understood this when he wrote, "A man becomes calm in the measure that he understands himself as a thought-evolved being." The practice involves, when facing a fear-inducing situation, consciously zoom out to see the bigger picture. Ask yourself, how might I view this situation 5 years from now? Consider, what might someone I deeply respect see in this situation that I'm missing? Explore, how might this challenge be serving my growth or offering an opportunity? Reflect, what larger context am I not considering that might change how I see this? This practice doesn't deny legitimate concerns, but places them within a more expansive framework that naturally reduces fear's intensity and creates space for creative response. 2. The evidence reframe. Many fears persist because we selectively gather evidence that supports them while ignoring evidence that contradicts them. This confirmation bias creates a self-reinforcing cycle where our fears seem increasingly justified despite contrary evidence. To practice the evidence reframe, identify a specific fear belief. I'm not capable of handling this challenge. Or, people will reject me if I show my authentic self. Consciously search for evidence that contradicts this belief. Times you've handled similar challenges, relationships where you've been accepted for your authenticity. Give equal or greater weight to this contradictory evidence. Consider what belief would better account for all the evidence, not just the fear-supporting portions. Practice articulating this new, more balanced belief until it becomes familiar. Thomas Troward might describe this as aligning with the law of growth from within outward, allowing a more accurate and expansive understanding to emerge from within rather than imposing limitations from without. 3. The language reframe. The specific words we use to describe our experiences powerfully shape how we feel about them. By consciously shifting our language, we can transform our emotional response without denying the underlying reality. Florence Scovel. Shin recognized this power when she wrote about the game of life and how to play it. The language reframe involves noticing the fear-based language you use. I'm terrified. This is awful. I can't handle this. Consciously choosing more empowering alternatives. I'm feeling challenged. This is difficult but meaningful. I'm developing the capacity to handle this, replacing absolutes with specifics. Everything is falling apart becomes, this specific aspect is challenging right now, shifting from permanence to temporality. I always fail becomes, this attempt didn't work out as I hoped. Moving from identity to experience. I am anxious becomes, I'm experiencing anxiety at the moment. This practice doesn't involve denying genuine feelings, but choosing language that creates possibility rather than limitation, agency rather than victimhood. 4. The purpose reframe. Many experiences that trigger fear can be transformed by assigning them a meaningful purpose. When we perceive events as random or meaningless, fear often fills the interpretive void. By consciously attributing purpose, particularly purposes related to growth, service, or deeper understanding, we shift from fear to meaning. Emerson touched on this when he wrote, "The purpose of life is not to be happy. It is to be useful, to be honorable, to be compassionate, to have it make some difference that you have lived and lived well." The practice involves, when facing a challenging situation, ask, how might this be serving a meaningful purpose in my life? Consider, what qualities or capacities might this experience be developing in me? Explore, how might this challenge prepare me for future service or contribution? Reflect, what understanding or wisdom might emerge from fully engaging with this difficulty? Inquire, how might this experience be exactly what I need for my next stage of growth? This reframe doesn't require believing in a predetermined fate, but rather recognizing our capacity to create meaning from any experience, transforming even difficulties into opportunities for growth and service. The both and reframe. Fear often creates binary thinking, seeing situations as entirely threatening or entirely safe, people as completely trustworthy or completely dangerous, outcomes as absolute success or absolute failure. By cultivating both and thinking, we create space for nuance and possibility. James Allen pointed toward this when he wrote about the mastery of destiny through balanced thought. The practice involves noticing when you're caught in either-or thinking, either I succeed perfectly or I am a complete failure, consciously introducing the both and perspective. I can both make mistakes and be on a path of success. Embracing apparent contradictions. This situation is both challenging and an opportunity, allowing multiple truths to coexist. I can both feel afraid and act with courage. Recognizing complexity. This person can both have limitations and be worthy of trust in specific ways. This reframe naturally reduces fear by expanding beyond the rigid categories that the frightened mind creates, allowing for a more accurate and nuanced perception of reality. Reframing in action, a process. While each of these reframing approaches offers valuable perspective shifts, their true power emerges when integrated into a coherent process for transforming fear in real time. Let's explore how this might work in practice. 1. Notice the fear arising, acknowledging it with presence rather than resistance. 2. Identify the current frame, or interpretation generating the fear. What story am I telling myself about this situation? 3. Question the frame's validity. Is this interpretation absolutely true? What evidence might contradict it? 4. Explore alternative frames. What other ways might I understand this same situation? 5. Choose a frame that feels both truthful and empowering, neither denying reality nor limiting possibility. Embody the new frame through language, posture, and action, allowing it to shape your experience. 7. Notice the results of this shift, both internally in your emotional state and externally in the situation's development. This process doesn't eliminate challenges, but transforms your relationship with them, reducing fear's power and expanding your capacity for creative response. Beyond positive thinking. It's important to distinguish reframing from mere positive thinking or denial of difficulty. Effective reframing doesn't involve pretending everything is wonderful when it isn't. Rather, it means finding interpretations that are both truthful and empowering, perspectives that acknowledge reality while creating space for growth and possibility. Thomas Troward understood this distinction when he wrote about the higher mode of intelligence that neither denies apparent limitations nor accepts them as final reality. True reframing emerges from this higher intelligence, seeing both what is and what might be, both challenge and opportunity, both limitation and possibility. Reframing and the nervous system. The practice of reframing affects not just our thoughts but our entire physiology. When we shift from threat-based to opportunity-based interpretations, our nervous system responds accordingly, moving from sympathetic, fight or flight activation, toward parasympathetic, rest and digest, regulation. This physiological shift has profound implications. A regulated nervous system enables access to our higher cognitive functions, including creativity, nuanced thinking, and empathy. These capacities, in turn, allow us to respond more effectively to challenges, creating a virtuous cycle where reduced fear leads to better outcomes, which further reduce fear. The metaphysical dimension of reframing. From a metaphysical perspective, reframing represents far more than a psychological technique. It is the practical application of our creative power as expressions of divine intelligence. As Florence Scovel Shinn wrote, "There is a place that you are to fill and no one else can fill, something you are to do which no one else can do." When we consciously choose how to interpret our experiences, we participate in the creative process through which consciousness shapes reality. We move from being passive victims of circumstance to active co-creators of our experience, aligning with what Troward called the great law of the universe, the law of creative expression from within outward. Reframing collective fears. While our focus has been primarily on personal fears, the practice of reframing has profound implications for addressing collective fears as well. Many of the greatest challenges we face as a society, from political polarization to environmental concerns, are amplified by shared fear-based interpretations that limit our capacity for creative response. Emerson recognized this when he wrote, "Fear defeats more people than any other one thing in the world." By practicing reframing in our individual lives, we contribute to a shift in collective consciousness, demonstrating through our example that alternative interpretations, and therefore alternative outcomes, are possible. The practice of reframing. Fear itself. Perhaps the most powerful application of reframing is to transform our understanding of fear itself. Rather than seeing fear as an enemy to be conquered or a weakness to be overcome, we can recognize it as a messenger bringing important information about our beliefs and perceptions, a teacher offering opportunities for growth and expanded awareness, a compass pointing toward areas that require our loving attention, a guardian whose protective intention, though sometimes misguided, deserves respect, a catalyst for developing deeper courage, wisdom, and compassion. This fundamental reframe doesn't eliminate fear, but transforms our relationship with it, allowing it to serve rather than limit our growth and expression. The art of conscious choice. As we develop skill in reframing, we recognize a profound truth. At every moment, we have the power to choose how we interpret our experiences. This choice may not always feel available, particularly in moments of intense fear or conditioning. Yet with practice, the gap between stimulus and response widens, creating space for conscious interpretation rather than automatic reaction. James Allen captured this truth when he wrote, "You are today where your thoughts have brought you. You will be tomorrow where your thoughts take you." Through consistent practice of reframing, we gradually become masters of our mental landscape rather than its servants, choosing interpretations that liberate rather than limit our potential. Integration with presence. The practice of reframing builds directly upon the foundation of presence we explored in the previous chapter. Without presence, the capacity to witness our current interpretations with awareness, reframing becomes merely another form of unconscious reactivity, replacing one automatic pattern with another. Thomas Troward understood this integration when he wrote about the creative power of thought operating from a place of centered awareness. Presence provides the ground from which conscious reframing can emerge, while reframing gives presence a specific direction and application in transforming our relationship with fear. Practical applications in daily life. To integrate reframing into your daily experience, consider these practical suggestions. Begin each day by consciously choosing an empowering frame for whatever challenges you anticipate. Create physical reminders, notes, images, objects that represent alternative perspectives on situations that typically trigger fear. Practice the pause and reframe technique when you notice fear arising, pausing to acknowledge the current interpretation, then deliberately exploring alternatives. Develop a reframing partner with whom you can share challenging situations and collaborate in finding more empowering perspectives. Keep a reframing journal where you record fear-triggering situations and explore multiple ways of interpreting them. These practical applications transform reframing from an abstract concept into a living practice that gradually reshapes your relationship with fear. The journey of transformation. As we conclude this exploration of reframing, remember that this practice, like all aspects of inner growth, is a journey rather than a destination. There will be days when reframing comes naturally, and others when fear's familiar interpretations seem overwhelmingly convincing. This oscillation is not failure, but the natural rhythm of transformation. Florence Scovel Shinn understood this when she wrote, "The game of life is a game of boomerangs. Our thoughts, deeds, and words return to us sooner or later with astounding accuracy." As you practice reframing with patience and persistence, you gradually create new patterns of interpretation that return to you as transformed experience. Not immediately in every instance, but with increasing frequency and depth over time. In our next chapter, we will explore how to cultivate courage, the natural expression of your authentic being when fear no longer dominates your perception. This cultivation builds directly upon the foundation of presence and the practice of reframing, creating the conditions for your fearless soul to emerge not as a distant ideal, but as your lived reality. For now, I invite you to begin experimenting with reframing in your daily life. Notice a situation that typically triggers fear and explore how different interpretations might transform your experience of it. Remember that you are not denying reality, but choosing which aspects of a complex truth to emphasize. A choice that profoundly shapes not just how you feel, but what becomes possible. Chapter 7. Cultivating courage, building inner resilience and bravery. Having established the practices of presence and reframing, we now turn to the active cultivation of courage, the quality that naturally emerges when fear no longer dominates our consciousness. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the capacity to move forward with purpose and integrity despite fear's presence. In this chapter, we will explore how to consciously develop this essential quality, building inner resilience and bravery as foundations of your fearless soul. The true nature of courage. Courage, at its essence, is not a personality trait that some possess and others lack, but a capacity inherent in all human beings. A quality of our authentic nature that can be awakened and strengthened through conscious practice. As Emerson observed, what lies behind us and what lies before us are tiny matters compared to what lies within us. The courage we seek already exists within, waiting only for the conditions that allow its expression. This understanding liberates us from the belief that we must somehow become different people to act courageously. Instead, courage involves remembering and embodying who we truly are beneath the conditioning of fear. Thomas Troward pointed toward this truth when he wrote about the law of being that governs our essential nature, a nature that is inherently brave, whole, and free. Courage as alignment. From a metaphysical perspective, courage represents alignment with our true nature and with the universal intelligence that flows through all life. When we act courageously, we are not forcing ourselves against natural inclination, but rather removing the obstructions that have prevented the natural expression of our authentic being. Florence Scovel Shinn captured this understanding when she wrote, "Nothing stands between man and his highest ideals and every desire of his heart, but doubt and fear." Courage emerges not through struggle against fear, but through reconnection with the deeper current of our being that flows beneath fear's surface disturbance. The qualities of courage. Before exploring specific practices for cultivating courage, let us understand its essential qualities. True courage is grounded, connected to reality rather than fantasy, facing what is with clarity and presence, flexible, responsive to changing circumstances rather than rigid or dogmatic, discerning, wise about when to advance and when to retreat, guided by deeper values rather than impulse, compassionate, motivated by love and service rather than ego or aggression, sustainable, drawing from renewable inner resources rather than adrenaline or willpower, authentic, expressing your unique truth rather than conforming to external expectations. These qualities distinguish genuine courage from its counterfeits, recklessness, bravado, or forced action that ultimately depletes rather than sustains us. As James Allen wrote, "The outer conditions of a person's life will always reflect their inner beliefs." By cultivating these qualities of true courage, we naturally transform both our inner experience and our outer circumstances. Practices for cultivating courage. Let us now explore specific practices for awakening and strengthening the courage that is your birthright. 1. The practice of incremental stretching. Courage, like any quality, develops through practice, specifically by gradually extending beyond your current comfort zone in manageable increments. This approach honors both your capacity for growth and your need for integration and safety. Thomas Troward understood this principle when he wrote about the law of growth that governs all evolution. The practice involves identifying an area where fear has limited your expression or action, determining a small step that stretches beyond comfort but doesn't overwhelm your system, taking this step with full presence, noticing both the fear that arises and your capacity to move with it, allowing integration time before taking the next step, honoring your system's need to incorporate new experiences, gradually expanding your courage zone through consistent, incremental action. This practice builds confidence in your capacity to move with fear rather than be stopped by it, a confidence based not on positive thinking, but on actual experience of your own resilience. 2. The values clarification practice. Courage flows most naturally when connected to deeply held values and meaningful purpose. By clarifying what matters most to you, you create a compelling why that can carry you through the discomfort of fear. Emerson pointed toward this when he wrote, "Nothing great was ever achieved without enthusiasm." Understanding that enthusiasm springs from connection with what deeply matters. The practice involves reflecting on times when you've acted courageously despite fear, identifying the values or purposes that enabled this courage, clarifying your core values through contemplative questioning. What matters most to me? What do I want my life to stand for? What contribution do I feel called to make? Creating tangible reminders of these values for moments when fear arises. Regularly reconnecting with your why through reflection, journaling, or conversation with trusted others. This practice doesn't eliminate fear, but provides a context in which fear becomes secondary to something greater, your commitment to what truly matters. 3. The somatic courage practice. Courage is not merely a mental state, but a full-bodied experience. By working directly with the body, we can access and strengthen courage at the physiological level, creating new patterns of embodied bravery. Florence Scovel Shinn understood this mind-body connection when she wrote about the body being the subconscious mind that faithfully expresses our deeper beliefs. The somatic practice involves identifying how courage feels in your body, the sensations, posture, breathing patterns, and energy of bravery. Regularly embodying these physical qualities, particularly before facing challenging situations. Practicing the power pose, standing with feet firmly planted, shoulders back, head high, breathing deeply for 2 minutes. Engaging in regular physical practices that build body confidence. Dance, martial arts, yoga, or any movement that helps you feel strong and capable. Developing a personal courage gesture, a physical movement that anchors you in your brave self. This practice recognizes that mind and body exist in constant feedback. By changing physical patterns, we simultaneously transform mental and emotional states. 4. The courage visualization. Visualization is not mere fantasy, but a powerful tool for creating new neural pathways that support courageous action. By vividly imagining yourself moving through fear with grace and strength, you prepare your system for actually doing so. Thomas Troward described this as engaging the law of attraction through the operation of conscious thought. The practice involves creating a quiet, receptive state through brief meditation or deep breathing, vividly imagining yourself facing a fear-inducing situation with courage and clarity, engaging all senses in this visualization, seeing, hearing, feeling the experience of embodied courage, including realistic challenges in your visualization, not denying fear, but seeing yourself moving with it, concluding with a sense of accomplishment and integration, feeling the satisfaction of courageous action. This practice bridges inner and outer transformation, creating a template for courage that your system can draw upon when actually facing challenges. 5. The courage inventory practice. Many of us discount or forget the courage we've already demonstrated throughout our lives. By consciously inventorying these experiences, we strengthen our identity as someone capable of brave action. James Allen understood this when he wrote, "Men do not attract what they want, but what they are." By recognizing the courage you've already embodied, you strengthen your self-concept as someone who acts bravely. The practice involves reflecting on your entire life journey, identifying moments of courage both large and small, writing or speaking these experiences in detail, acknowledging the fears you faced and the values that motivated your courage, recognizing patterns in your courageous actions, the types of situations where your bravery naturally emerges, creating a physical representation of this courage inventory, a written document, symbolic object, or visual collage, regularly reviewing and adding to this inventory, particularly before facing new challenges. This practice counteracts the mind's negativity bias, which often emphasizes failures while discounting successes, creating a more accurate and empowering self-perception. Courage in relationship. While our exploration has focused primarily on individual courage, some of our greatest fears, and therefore our greatest opportunities for courage, arise in relationship with others. The vulnerability of authentic connection, the risk of rejection, the challenge of honest communication, these relational dimensions call for particular forms of bravery. Florence Scovel Shinn recognized this when she wrote about perfect self-expression in relationship with others. Relational courage involves speaking your truth with both honesty and compassion, setting clear boundaries that honor both yourself and others, remaining open to connection even after experiences of hurt, offering forgiveness that releases resentment without denying impact, showing your authentic self rather than a persona designed to please or impress. These expressions of relational courage create the conditions for genuine intimacy, the experience of being fully seen and accepted, which is among our deepest human needs and greatest sources of fulfillment. Courage and vulnerability. Perhaps counterintuitively, true courage requires embracing vulnerability rather than armoring against it. The attempt to become invulnerable, to create an impenetrable shield against potential hurt, ultimately diminishes our capacity for both courage and connection. Emerson understood this paradox when he wrote, "He who is not every day conquering some fear has not learned the secret of life." The conquest of fear comes not through eliminating vulnerability, but through willingly engaging with it from a place of inner strength and authenticity. This understanding transforms our relationship with vulnerability from something to be avoided to something to be consciously embraced as the pathway to our most meaningful experiences and contributions. The most courageous actions often involve willingly stepping into vulnerability for the sake of what matters, whether speaking an unpopular truth, creating art that reveals your heart, or reaching for connection despite past hurt. Courage and failure. No exploration of courage would be complete without addressing our relationship with failure. For many, the fear of failure represents the greatest obstacle to courageous action, the belief that mistakes or setbacks somehow define our worth or capacity. James Allen offered wisdom for this challenge when he wrote, "A man is literally what he thinks. his character being the complete sum of all his thoughts. By transforming our thoughts about failure from judgment to learning, we liberate courage from the paralyzing fear of imperfection. The practice involves reframing failure as feedback rather than final judgment, recognizing that all significant achievement involves multiple attempts and adjustments, celebrating the courage of trying rather than only the achievement of specific outcomes, developing resilience through the growth mindset that views challenges as opportunities for development, creating supportive contexts for risk-taking that normalize the learning process. This transformed relationship with failure doesn't eliminate the discomfort of setbacks, but places them within a larger context of growth and meaning that supports continued courageous action. The courage of non-action. While courage often involves taking action despite fear, there exists another form of bravery that's equally important. The courage of non-action, of restraint, of saying no when circumstances call for it. This form of courage requires resisting external pressure and internal impulse to act prematurely or inappropriately. Thomas Troward pointed toward this understanding when he wrote about the great negative, the power of conscious restraint that creates space for right action to emerge. The courage of non-action involves pausing before reacting, creating space for wisdom to emerge, setting boundaries that may disappoint others but honor deeper values, resisting the pressure to conform when authenticity requires a different path, allowing natural consequences rather than rushing to fix or control, staying with uncertainty when clarity hasn't yet emerged. This form of courage often receives less recognition than dramatic action, but may require even greater inner strength, the capacity to stand firm in your truth despite external or internal pressure to compromise. Courage and fear, partners in growth. As we deepen our understanding of courage, we recognize that its relationship with fear is not one of opposition, but of partnership. Fear and courage exist not as enemies, but as different aspects of our human experience, each with wisdom to offer when approached with presence and discernment. Florence Scovel Shinn captured this understanding when she wrote, "Fear is faith in evil instead of good. Courage represents faith in possibility, growth, and meaning. Not the denial of challenges, but the trust in our capacity to meet them with authenticity and resilience." This partnership perspective transforms how we approach fear itself. Rather than battling against fear as an enemy to be vanquished, we learn to honor its protective intention while choosing to be guided by the deeper wisdom of courage. We might even thank fear for its vigilance while gently explaining that we'll be following courage's guidance in this instance. The spiritual dimension of courage. From a spiritual perspective, courage represents alignment with the divine intelligence that flows through all life, what Emerson called the oversoul and Troward termed the universal subjective mind. When we act courageously, we participate in the creative expression of this intelligence, allowing it to flow through us into the world. This understanding offers profound support for the cultivation of courage. We need not generate bravery through force of will, but can instead open ourselves to receive the courage that naturally flows when we align with our deeper nature. The practice becomes one of surrender rather than struggle, of allowing rather than forcing. James Allen pointed toward this when he wrote, "As the physically weak man can make himself strong by careful and patient training, so the man of weak thoughts can make them strong by exercising himself in right thinking." The right thinking that generates courage involves remembering our connection to something greater than our separate selves, the universal intelligence that knows no fear. Courage as a daily practice. The cultivation of courage is not a one-time achievement, but an ongoing practice, a daily commitment to choosing authenticity, purpose, and growth over the familiar limitations of fear. Like any practice, it develops through consistency rather than intensity, through regular small choices rather than occasional heroic acts. Consider how you might incorporate courage practice into your daily life. Begin each day by setting an intention to act from courage rather than fear. Identify one small courage stretch to undertake before the day ends. Pause when fear arises to reconnect with your deeper values and purpose. Celebrate moments of courage, no matter how small they might seem. Reflect each evening on opportunities taken and missed, with compassion rather than judgment. Through this daily practice, courage gradually becomes not something you occasionally summon, but a natural expression of who you are. Your default response, rather than your exceptional effort. The ripple effect of courage. As we conclude this exploration of courage, remember that your brave choices affect not only your own life, but the lives of countless others. When you act courageously, you demonstrate what's possible, creating permission and inspiration for others to access their own bravery. Florence Scovel Shinn understood this ripple effect when she wrote, "Every man has within himself the capacity of mastering his own destiny. By mastering fear through the cultivation of courage, you contribute to the collective awakening of humanity from the trance of limitation and separation. This understanding doesn't create pressure to be perfectly courageous, but offers perspective on the significance of even small acts of bravery. Each time you choose courage over fear, you strengthen not just your own capacity, but the field of possibility for all beings." In our next chapter, we will explore how to trust the flow of life, replacing fear with faith in the process of unfolding that carries us toward our highest good, even when the path isn't clear. This trust builds upon the foundation of presence, reframing, and courage we've established, creating the conditions for your fearless soul to fully emerge. For now, I invite you to begin consciously cultivating courage in your daily life. Notice an area where fear has limited your authentic expression, and take one small, manageable step beyond that limitation. Remember that courage doesn't require the absence of fear, but simply the willingness to move with it, to feel the fear and choose from a deeper place of purpose, authenticity, and trust in your inherent capacity to grow. Chapter 8: Trusting the Flow, Replacing Fear with Faith in the Process of Life. As we approach the culmination of our journey, we arrive at perhaps the most profound transformation in our relationship with fear. Moving from resistance to trust, from control to surrender, from anxiety about outcomes to faith in the process of life itself. In this chapter, we will explore how to develop this deep trust, not as a passive resignation, but as an active alignment with the intelligent flow that carries us toward our highest good. The nature of trust. Trust, at its essence, represents a fundamental orientation toward life, a willingness to be carried by a current greater than our separate selves. As Thomas Troward observed, the whole livingness of life consists in the ceaseless pulsation of this one spirit, continually passing from the universal into the individual, and back again from the individual into the universal. Trust involves recognizing and aligning with this pulsation rather than resisting it through fear-based control. This trust is not blind faith or naive optimism, but a mature recognition of how life actually unfolds, not according to our limited plans and preferences, but through an intelligence that operates at levels beyond our conscious understanding. As Emerson wrote, "All I have seen teaches me to trust the Creator for all I have not seen," pointing toward an experiential rather than theoretical foundation for trust. Fear and the illusion of control. Much of our fear stems from the fundamental misconception that control is both possible and necessary, that our safety and well-being depend on our ability to manage outcomes, predict the future, and eliminate uncertainty. This illusion of control creates a perpetual anxiety, as we instinctively recognize that complete control is impossible, yet continue to strive for it. James Allen understood this when he wrote, "Men are anxious to improve their circumstances, but are unwilling to improve themselves. They therefore remain bound." The improvement of self that Allen references involves, in part, releasing the attachment to control that generates so much of our suffering, the wisdom of uncertainty. Contrary to our fear-based perception, uncertainty is not an obstacle to be overcome, but a fundamental condition of existence that contains profound wisdom and possibility. When we resist uncertainty, demanding guarantees before we'll proceed, we cut ourselves off from the very intelligence that would guide our unfolding. Florence Scovel Shin captured this understanding when she wrote, "The invisible forces are ever working for man who is always pulling the strings himself, though he does not know it. These invisible forces, the intelligent current of life, can only work on our behalf when we loosen our grip on the strings, allowing something greater than our separate will to influence outcomes." This doesn't mean abandoning discernment or responsible action, but rather holding our plans and efforts within a larger context of trust, recognizing that our vision is limited and that the highest good may arrive through channels we neither expect nor control. From fear-based control to trust-based flow. The shift from fear-based control to trust-based flow represents one of the most liberating transformations possible in human consciousness. This shift doesn't happen all at once, but develops gradually through consistent practice and direct experience of being carried by life when we release resistance. Let us explore several practices that support this profound transformation. 1. The surrender practice. Surrender, properly understood, is not about giving up or giving in, but about releasing resistance to what is, while maintaining clear intention about what you're creating. This delicate balance of acceptance and vision creates the conditions for trust to develop. Thomas Troward described this as the combination of the active and passive principles that allows divine intelligence to express through human experience. The practice involves identifying an area where fear and control have created suffering, clearly articulating your highest intention for this situation, consciously releasing attachment to how this intention manifests, symbolically offering the situation to a higher intelligence, whether you conceive this as God, universe, higher self, or life, taking inspired action without forcing outcomes, remaining responsive to how the situation unfolds. This practice doesn't eliminate responsibility, but transforms how we hold it, from the tense grip of fear to the open hands of trust. 2. The practice of recognizing guidance. Trust develops naturally as we begin to recognize the subtle guidance that's always available when we're open to receiving it. This guidance may come through intuition, synchronicity, dreams, body wisdom, or the words of others, channels that fear often blocks through its insistence on certainty and control. Emerson pointed toward this when he wrote about the wise silence that speaks more clearly than words. The practice involves creating regular quiet space to listen beneath the noise of fear and conditioning, noticing subtle feelings of expansion, guidance toward, or contraction, guidance away, paying attention to recurring themes, images, or ideas that arise from various sources, acknowledging unexpected opportunities or connections that appear in your path, experimenting with following this guidance in small ways, noticing the results as you develop skill in recognizing and following. Guidance, trust naturally strengthens through direct experience of being led toward your highest good, often through unexpected channels. 3. The retrospective trust practice. One of the most powerful ways to develop trust is to consciously review your life journey, recognizing how even difficulties and apparent setbacks have contributed to your growth and led you to where you are now. This retrospective view reveals the intelligent unfolding that may not be visible when we're in the midst of challenges. James Allen understood this when he wrote, "The soul attracts that which it secretly harbors, that which it loves, and also that which it fears." The practice involves reflecting on significant challenges or disappointments in your past, identifying how these experiences contributed to your growth, wisdom, or current opportunities, recognizing patterns of meaning and purpose that were not apparent at the time, acknowledging how doors that closed led to other doors opening, considering how your present challenges might similarly be serving your evolution. This practice doesn't deny the real pain of difficult experiences, but places them within a larger context of meaningful unfolding, strengthening trust in the process, even when outcomes aren't immediately positive. 4. The present moment trust practice. Trust is ultimately not about the future, but about our relationship with the present moment, our willingness to be fully here now, regardless of circumstances. By anchoring trust in present experience rather than future outcomes, we create a stable foundation that fear cannot easily disturb. Florence Scovel Shinn captured this when she wrote, "The thing man seeks is seeking him. The telephone was seeking Bell." The present moment contains everything needed for the next step of our journey, if we're present enough to receive it. The practice involves bringing full attention to this moment, regardless of whether it meets your preferences. Asking, what is the gift or opportunity in this exact situation? Noticing the resources available right now. Inner qualities, external support, ideas, energy. Taking the step that's clear in this moment without needing to see the entire path. Trusting that the next step will become clear as you take the current one. This practice transforms trust from an abstract ideal to a lived experience, available regardless of external circumstances or future uncertainties. File, the body trust practice. Our bodies represent the intelligence of life in material form, billions of processes occurring harmoniously without our conscious direction. By developing conscious trust in the body's wisdom, we create a tangible experience of trusting the larger intelligence of which the body is an expression. Thomas Troward understood this when he wrote about the subjective mind that governs bodily functions with an intelligence beyond conscious thought. The practice involves bringing awareness to your breath, noticing how it continues without your management, feeling the heartbeat that has sustained you from before birth without your control, appreciating the countless processes occurring perfectly without your intervention, listening to the body's signals, hunger, thirst, fatigue, pain, as intelligent communication, responding to these signals with respect rather than override or neglect. As trust in the body's wisdom develops, it naturally extends to trust in the larger intelligence of which the body is a perfect expression. Trust and discernment. True trust doesn't mean abandoning discernment or critical thinking, but rather holding these faculties within a larger context of faith in life's unfolding. We still use our judgment, make choices, and take responsible action, but without the constriction of fear or the rigidity of control. Emerson pointed toward this balance when he wrote, "Trust thyself. Every heart vibrates to that iron string." This self-trust includes trusting our capacity for discernment while recognizing the limitations of our perspective. We use our judgment not to control outcomes, but to align our choices with the highest good as we currently perceive it, remaining open to expanded understanding. Trust and timing. One of the most challenging aspects of developing trust involves accepting life's timing, which rarely matches our preferences or expectations. Fear creates a sense of urgency that demands immediate resolution, while trust allows for the organic unfolding that often requires cycles of preparation, action, and integration. James Allen understood this when he wrote, "The more tranquil a man becomes, the greater is his success, his influence, his power for good." This tranquility emerges from trusting the timing of life rather than forcing our own schedule upon it, recognizing that what appears as delay often serves purposes we cannot yet see. The practice involves noticing when fear creates a sense of desperate urgency, distinguishing between genuine timeliness and fear-based rushing, asking, what might be served by this timing that differs from my preference, looking for the gift in periods of apparent waiting or delay, taking appropriate action without attachment to immediate results. This relationship with timing transforms what fear perceives as obstacles into opportunities for deeper preparation, integration, or alignment. Trust and suffering. Perhaps the greatest test of trust comes when we face genuine suffering, experiences of loss, pain, or injustice that seem to contradict the notion of a benevolent intelligence guiding life. How do we maintain trust in the face of real tragedy, both personal and collective? Florence Scovel Shinn addressed this challenge when she wrote, "Every great work, every big accomplishment has been brought into manifestation through holding to the vision, and often just before the big achievement comes apparent failure and discouragement." While this perspective doesn't explain all suffering, it points toward the possibility that even our deepest challenges may serve purposes beyond our current understanding. The practice involves acknowledging the real pain of difficult experiences without denial or spiritual bypass, maintaining openness to meaning and purpose, even when not immediately apparent, recognizing that growth often occurs through challenge rather than comfort, drawing on the wisdom traditions that have addressed suffering throughout human history, holding both the pain of what is and the possibility of redemptive meaning. This approach doesn't eliminate suffering, but transforms our relationship with it, preventing pain from becoming the foundation for a fearful worldview that expects and therefore attracts more suffering. Trust and action. Trust does not mean passive waiting, but active participation in life's unfolding. The question becomes not whether to act, but from what consciousness we act, from the contracted state of fear or the expanded state of trust. Thomas Troward captured this distinction when he wrote about the law of growth from within outward, emphasizing that right action emerges from inner alignment rather than external pressure. Trust-based action flows from inspiration rather than fear, from response rather than reaction, from service rather than self-protection. The practice involves pausing before action to check your internal state. Are you moving from fear or trust? Taking action when inspired rather than when driven by anxiety. Remaining flexible and responsive rather than rigid and controlling. Acting from abundance rather than scarcity, generosity rather than protection. Trusting the process even when results aren't immediately visible. This approach transforms action from a desperate attempt to control outcomes into a joyful participation in life's creative unfolding. Trust and relationship. Our capacity for trust profoundly shapes our experience of relationship, determining whether we approach connection from fear of hurt or openness to love. The development of trust creates the foundation for authentic intimacy, the experience of being fully seen and accepted that represents one of our deepest human needs. James Allen understood this when he wrote, "The thoughtless, the ignorant, and the indolent, seeing only the apparent effects of things and not the things themselves, talk of luck, of fortune, and chance." When we trust the deeper currents operating in relationship, we move beyond surface reactions to engage with the meaningful connections that fear often prevents. The practice involves approaching relationships with openness rather than protective armor, recognizing that vulnerability creates the possibility for genuine connection, trusting that even relationship challenges serve the growth of all involved, releasing the need to control others' perceptions or responses, allowing relationships to evolve according to their own wisdom rather than fixed expectations. This trust transforms relationships from sources of anxiety to containers for growth, healing, and joy. The metaphysical foundation of trust. From a metaphysical perspective, trust represents alignment with the fundamental nature of reality, the recognition that we exist within an intelligent, interconnected whole rather than as separate entities in a random universe. This perspective doesn't require religious belief, but simply an honest recognition of the order, pattern, and purpose evident throughout existence. Emerson expressed this understanding when he wrote, "The universe is represented in every one of its particles. Each moment, each experience, each apparent obstacle contains the intelligence of the whole, guiding us toward greater awareness and expression if we're open to receiving this guidance." Thomas Troward elaborated on this understanding through his concept of the universal subjective mind that operates through all creation, including human consciousness. By developing trust, we align our individual awareness with this universal intelligence, allowing it to express more fully through our unique being. Trust as a path of transformation. As we conclude this exploration of trust, recognize that the journey from fear to faith represents not just a change in perspective, but a fundamental transformation of consciousness. This transformation doesn't occur through intellectual understanding alone, but through consistent practice and direct experience of being carried by a wisdom greater than our separate selves. Florence Scovel Shinn captured this transformative potential when she wrote, The game of life is a game of boomerangs. Our thoughts, deeds, and words return to us sooner or later with astounding accuracy. As we practice trust in thought, word, and deed, we create the conditions for experiences that further strengthen trust, establishing a virtuous cycle of expanding faith and diminishing fear. This doesn't mean that challenges disappear or that fear never arises. Rather, these experiences occur within a larger context of trust that transforms how we perceive and respond to them, not as threats to our safety, but as opportunities for growth, service, and deeper understanding. The ongoing journey. The development of trust is not a destination, but an ongoing journey, a continuous unfolding of ever deeper faith in the process of life. Each challenge presents a new opportunity to choose trust over fear, surrender over control, flow over resistance. With each such choice, we strengthen the neural pathways and energetic patterns that support living from trust rather than fear. James Allen understood this ongoing nature when he wrote, "As the physically weak man can make himself strong by careful and patient training, so the man of weak thoughts can make them strong by exercising himself in right thinking." The right thinking that Allen references includes the consistent choice to trust life's unfolding, even when appearances temporarily suggest otherwise. As we move toward the conclusion of this book in the next chapter, we will integrate all we've explored, presence, reframing, courage, and trust, into a cohesive approach to living from your fearless soul. For now, I invite you to begin practicing trust in your daily life, noticing opportunities to release control and open to the intelligent flow that has been carrying you all along, even when fear temporarily obscured this recognition. Remember, dear one, that trust is not something you need to create, but something you allow to emerge as you release the obstructions of fear and control. The current of life has been supporting you from your first breath. Learning to trust is simply remembering this truth and allowing it to inform your choices, your perceptions, and your way of being in the world. Conclusion. Living a life guided by courage, not limited by fear. As we arrive at the conclusion of our journey together, we stand at a threshold, a point of integration and new beginning. Throughout these chapters, we have explored the anatomy of fear, its vibrational impact, the architecture of your personal fear matrix, and the transformative practices of shadow integration, presence, reframing, courage cultivation, and trust development. Now, we bring these elements together into a cohesive whole, a foundation for living from your fearless soul rather than your conditioned fears. The journey we've traveled. Let us first acknowledge the path we've walked together. We began by understanding fear, not as an enemy to be vanquished, but as a messenger carrying important information about our beliefs, perceptions, and unhealed aspects. We recognized how fear operates both psychologically and energetically, constricting our field and lowering our vibrational frequency when we allow it to dominate our consciousness. We then explored your unique fear matrix, the interconnected web of core fears, triggers, beliefs, and protective mechanisms that has shaped your relationship with fear. Through practices of shadow integration, we learn to face rather than avoid the aspects of ourselves that fear has kept hidden, bringing compassionate awareness to what has operated in darkness. The practice of presence revealed how being fully in the now naturally dissolves anxiety, which cannot exist except through time-based thinking. Reframing showed us how to shift perception, reducing fear's power by choosing interpretations that are both truthful and empowering. We explored concrete practices for cultivating courage, building inner resilience and bravery as natural expressions of our authentic being. Finally, we discovered how developing trust in the process of life creates the foundation for replacing fear with faith. Not blind faith, but a mature recognition of the intelligent unfolding that carries us toward our highest good, even when the path isn't immediately clear. Throughout this exploration, we've drawn inspiration from timeless wisdom traditions and contemporary understanding, recognizing that the journey from fear to courage represents one of humanity's most essential transformations, a path walked by countless seekers before us and illuminated by them. The integrated approach. These various elements, presence, shadow work, Reframing, courage cultivation, and trust development are not separate techniques, but aspects of an integrated approach to living from your fearless soul. Like facets of a single jewel, they reflect different dimensions of the same fundamental transformation. The shift from fear-based contraction to love-based expansion, from separation to connection, from resistance to flow. Thomas Troward captured this integration when he wrote about the unity of the spirit that underlies all genuine transformation. The practices we've explored represent different doorways into this unity, different approaches to the same essential recognition of our true nature beyond fear. In daily application, this integrated approach might unfold as follows. 1. Notice fear arising. With present awareness, neither identifying with it nor resisting it. 2. Explore the fear with compassion, recognizing its roots in your personal fear matrix and the shadow aspects it might be revealing. 3. Reframe your perception of the triggering situation, finding interpretations that are both truthful and empowering. 4. Take courageous action, aligned with your deeper values and authentic nature, moving with fear rather than being stopped by it. 5. Trust the process of unfolding, releasing attachment to specific outcomes while maintaining clear intention. This flowing sequence represents not a rigid formula, but a natural movement of consciousness, from contraction to expansion, from reaction to response, from limitation to possibility. With practice, it becomes not something you do, but simply how you are, your natural way of being in relationship with life's challenges and opportunities. The daily practice. Transformation occurs not through occasional heroic efforts, but through consistent daily practice, the small choices and shifts in awareness that gradually rewire neural pathways and establish new energetic patterns. As James Allen wrote, "Men do not attract that which they want, but what they are." Daily practice shapes what you are, creating the conditions for experiences that reflect and reinforce your fearless nature. Consider establishing a daily rhythm that might include morning practice. Begin each day with moments of presence, perhaps through meditation or mindful breathing. Set an intention to approach the day from courage rather than fear, clarity rather than confusion, trust rather than control. Threshold moments. Use transitions between activities as opportunities to reset your state, returning to presence when you notice fear or reactivity arising. The space between meetings, the walk to your car, the moment before entering your home, all become opportunities for conscious choice. Trigger awareness. When fear is activated, use it as a signal for deeper awareness rather than a cause for self-judgment. Notice the trigger, recognize the underlying fear, and choose a response aligned with your authentic values rather than conditioned reactions. Evening reflection. Before sleep, review your day with compassionate awareness, noticing moments when you chose courage over fear and opportunities for growth when fear temporarily prevailed. Set an intention for your subconscious to integrate these lessons during sleep. Weekly integration. Dedicate time each week for deeper integration, perhaps through journaling, conversation with trusted others, or extended contemplative practice. This allows the subtle shifts of daily life to consolidate into lasting transformation. Through this rhythm of practice, what begins as conscious effort gradually becomes natural orientation, your default way of being, rather than something you must continually remember and apply. Beyond individual transformation. While our focus has been primarily on personal transformation, the journey from fear to courage has profound implications beyond individual experience. As Emerson observed, the reason why the world lacks unity and lies broken and in heaps is because man is disunited with himself. Our inner fragmentation contributes to collective division, just as our inner healing contributes to collective wholeness. When you live from your fearless soul, rather than your conditioned fears, you naturally become a catalyst for transformation in your relationships, communities, and the larger systems you participate in. Without preaching or imposing, Your embodied courage creates permission for others to access their own bravery. Your presence demonstrates the possibility of responding to challenges from love rather than fear, cooperation rather than competition, trust rather than control. Florence Scovel Shinn understood this ripple effect when she wrote, "There is a place that you are to fill and no one else can fill, something you are to do, which no one else can do." As you release the limitations of fear, you become available for this unique contribution, the particular expression of universal intelligence that can flow only through your specific being. The ongoing unfoldment. The journey from fear to courage is not a linear progression, but a spiral path of continuous unfoldment. There will be moments of profound freedom and clarity, interspersed with periods when old fears resurface, sometimes with surprising intensity. This oscillation doesn't represent failure, but the natural rhythm of transformation, the process through which deeper layers of conditioning are brought to light for integration. Thomas Troward described this as the law of growth that governs all evolution of consciousness. Growth occurs not through steady, continuous expansion, but through cycles of challenge, response, integration, and renewed challenge at a higher level. Each cycle brings the opportunity to embody courage more fully, to trust more deeply, to live more authentically. The key lies not in achieving some final state of fearlessness, but in developing a new relationship with the entire process. A relationship characterized by compassion rather than judgment, curiosity rather than resistance, trust rather than control. From this perspective, even moments when fear temporarily prevails become opportunities for deeper understanding and integration rather than evidence of failure. The essence of the fearless soul. At the heart of all we've explored lies a profound truth. Your essential nature, what we might call your soul, is inherently fearless. Not because it denies or suppresses fear, but because it exists beyond the conditions that generate fear. This nature hasn't been created through our practices, but simply remembered and revealed as the conditioning of fear has been gently dissolved. Emerson pointed toward this truth when he wrote, "What lies behind us and what lies before us are tiny matters compared to what lies within us. What lies within is a quality of being that fear cannot touch, an aware presence that witnesses but is not defined by the passing weather of emotion and thought." This recognition doesn't eliminate the human experience of fear, but transforms your relationship with it. Fear becomes not an obstacle to overcome, but a messenger to be heard, not an enemy to battle, but an aspect of experience to be integrated with compassion. From this perspective, courage emerges not as the opposite of fear, but as the capacity to embrace the fullness of human experience while remaining anchored in your fearless essence. The invitation. As we conclude our journey together, I offer not a final answer, but an ongoing invitation. An invitation to live each day as an exploration of your fearless soul, to approach each challenge as an opportunity for expanded awareness, to meet each fear as a doorway to deeper freedom. This invitation requires no special circumstances or perfect conditions. It can be accepted exactly where you are, with whatever you're facing in this very moment. It asks only for your willingness to remember what you've always been beneath the conditioning of fear, a unique expression of the infinite intelligence that flows through all life, inherently whole, inherently free, inherently fearless. James Allen captured this invitation when he wrote, "Dream lofty dreams, and as you dream, so shall you become. Your vision is the promise of what you shall one day be. Your ideal is the prophecy of what you shall at last unveil. The fearless soul is both your dream and your reality, both what you aspire to and what you already are beneath the veils of conditioning." Florence Scovel Shinn extended this same invitation when she wrote, "The game of life is a game of boomerangs. Our thoughts, deeds, and words return to us sooner or later with astounding accuracy. As you choose courage over fear, trust over control, love over separation, these choices return to you as experiences that further strengthen your capacity to live from your fearless soul." The final word. As you close this book and continue your unique journey, Remember that the path from fear to courage is not about becoming someone different, but about remembering who you've always been. The practices we've explored are not techniques for changing your essential nature, but keys for unlocking what has been obscured by conditioning. Your fearless soul is not a distant ideal, but your present reality, available in this and every moment when you choose to recognize it beneath the temporary weather of thought and emotion. This recognition doesn't require perfect circumstances or heroic effort, but simply the willingness to be present with what is, to choose love over fear whenever possible, and to trust the process of life even when the path isn't clear. May this understanding illuminate your path forward. May you walk in the growing recognition of your fearless nature. May your journey from fear to courage serve not only your own liberation, but the healing and awakening of all beings. And may you discover, with increasing clarity and joy, that the freedom you've been seeking has been here all along, not as a distant destination, but as the ground of your being, your true home, your fearless soul. With deep respect for your journey, thank you for joining me on this exploration of fear and the journey toward inner courage. I'd like to invite you to reflect for a moment. What part of your fearless soul is asking to be expressed right now? Perhaps there's a specific fear you've been allowing to direct your choices, or maybe you recognized yourself in one of the protective mechanisms we discussed. Whatever arose for you during this time together, I'd love to hear about it in the comments below. Before you continue with your day, here's a simple but powerful practice to begin dissolving fear immediately. When you notice fear arising, pause and take 3 deep breaths while placing one hand on your heart. As you breathe, silently acknowledge fear is present, without judgment. Then ask yourself, what would love do in this situation? This small shift from fear-based reaction to love-based response can transform your experience in an instant and begin rewiring your nervous system toward courage. If this exploration of fear and courage resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to join our community of conscious creators. Next Thursday, we'll be diving deep into esoteric knowledge and hidden spiritual principles that have been preserved through the ages. Until then, remember that beneath every fear lies a treasure of wisdom waiting to be discovered, and you already possess everything you need to claim it.